Now let's move on to Gio with the special sports report from World War II.
Now we move on to the sports. In 1944, during World War II. As for American football, the Green Bay Packers defeated the New York Giants in New York City for the NFL title 30-7. As for Australian football, the Victorian Football League was won by Fitzroy, the 48th VFL Premiership. And for baseball, on May 7, Chucho Ramos made his Major League debut as first baseman and outfielder with the Cincinnati Reds. He was the third baseball player from Venezuela to play Major League Baseball. On June 10th, 15-year-old Joe Nuxhall becomes the youngest baseball player to pitch a game in Major League history. As for the World Series, St. Louis Cardinals defeats St. Louis Browns 4-2. As for the Hall of Fame election, Commissioner Kennesaw Mountain Landis is elected by the Hall of Fame committee in December following his death the previous month. The long-delayed selection of at least 10 players from the 19th century is promised the following year. As for basketball, NBL Championship, Fort Wayne Zollner Pistons wins 3-0 over the Sheboygan Redskins. And in boxing, on August 4th, the War Bonds fight raised $36 million to fund the war effort as Bu Jack wins a 10-round decision over arch-rival Bob Montgomery at New York's Madison Square Garden. A few weeks later, they were both drafted on the same day by the U.S. Army. As for men's professional golf, the Masters Tournament, the US Open, and the British Open were all not played due to World War II, but the PGA Championship was won by Bob Hamilton. For the men's amateur golf, British Amateur and the US Amateur were also not played due to World War II. As for women's professional golf, the Women's Western Open was won by Babe Zaharias. The title holders championship, though, was not played due to World War II. As for ice hockey, the Stanley Cup was won by Montreal Canadiens as they sweep the Chicago Blackhawks in 4 straight games. As for the Olympic Games, the 1944 Winter Olympic Games and the 1944 Summer Olympics were all not played due to World War II. As for rowing, the boat race was also not contested due to World War II. And rugby union, 5 Nations Championship Series is also not contested because of World War II. And the Speed Skating World Championship were also not contested due to World War II. As for tennis, in Australia, the Australian Men's Single Championship and the Australian Women's Single Championship were not contested due to World War II. In England, the Wimbledon Men's Single Championship and the Women's Single Championship were also not contested. In France, French Men's Single Championship, Yvonne Petra defeats Henri Cochet. As for the Women's Single Championship, Raymond Jones Gruber was the victor. In USA, American Men's Single Championship, Fran Parker defeats Bill Talbert. As for the Women's Single Championship, Pauline Betts Addy defeats Margaret Osborne DuPont. As for the Davis Cup, 1944 International Lawn Tennis Challenge was not contested because of World War II. Thank you.
Now, please follow Gio and I as we go to the meeting room where we will have a debate as our last section of our special news report on World War II. Welcome to our debate on the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
The atomic bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki were nuclear attacks at the end of World War II against the Empire of Japan by the United States at the order of the U.S.
Okay, first we will be discussing the ethics. Is it morally right to use atomic bombs?
Yes. Bombing Japan was ethical in context of the horrors of World War II. World War II was the worst war the world has ever seen. By the end of this war, there was hardly any boundary between right and wrong anymore. War had become, on all sides, total war. It is for the reason that there was very little revulsion to the bombing of Japan at the time of the action. In the whole context of the bloodiest war in world history, bombing Japan was not that bad.
Actually, bombing Japan was a war crime and against humanity. Just as Peter Zunick said, Truman knew he was beginning the process of annihilation of the species. It is not just a war crime. It was a crime against humanity. Now let's move on to death toll. Did bombings reduce the death toll of World War II?
Invading Japan would have resulted in casualties far beyond bombs. The Americans anticipated losing many soldiers in the planned invasion of Japan. Although the actual number of expected fatalities and wounded is subject to some debate, Truman after the war stated that there had been advised that American casualties could range from 250,000 to 1 million. Millions of Japanese military and civilian casualties were expected. Millions of women, old men, and boys and girls had been trained to resist by such means as attacking with bamboo spears and strapping explosives to their bodies and throwing themselves under advancing tanks. The Japanese cabinet had approved a measure extending the draft to include men from ages 15 to 60 and women from 17 to 45. Supporters also point out to an order given by the Japanese War Ministry on August 1st, 1944, ordering the disposal and execution of all Allied prisoners of war, numbering over 100,000. If an invasion of the Japanese mainland took place, Hiroshima and Nagasaki would have been firebombed anyway.
I disagree. Atomic bombs were unnecessary. Japan was looking for peace. According to an account by Walter Brown, Truman agreed at a meeting 3 days before the bomb was dropped on Hiroshima that Japan was looking for peace. Truman was told by his Army generals Douglas MacArthur and Dwight Eisenhower and his Naval Chief of Staff William Leahy that there was no military need to use the bomb. Now what about the public opinion? What was the public opinion in America at the time?
The American public was very supportive of bombing in Japan.
Yes, but what about the image? Did the world understand or forgive the United States for their action?
No one mentions it anymore. Even in the history books, they do not include right and wrong inside. This topic is left to debate. Over 60% of the people agree with America, and only 22% are the opposition.
But people still do debate it till this day. Conventional firebombing would have caused a much significant damage without making the U.S. the first nation to use nuclear weapons. Thank you for joining us today on our discussion about the atomic bombings on Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Now back to you guys at the studio.
Thank you for joining us today.
Please join us next time on Channel 14, Clev's Network. Hello, I'm Giovani Trinidad, and I'm here with my partner, Monica.
Today's a world.
Hello, my name is Giovani. No. I forgot what I said.
Come on, your name's Giovanni.
Hello. Thank you, Samantha.
Welcome to the atomic.
Welcome to the atomic bombing. Hey.
1, 2, 3. Just
Wait.
sit. And you say back to you guys in the studio. Hurry before
We're
it
not
dies.
in the studio.
Hurry before it dies. No, we're not.
Women's professional. The Women's Western Open was won by Babe Zaharias.
I'm gonna shoot you.
Okay.
Hello. Hello, my name is Monica and I am a historian. Sam!